We're back with part 2 of my discussion with Judge Mark Johnson about the special needs of veterans when they're going through divorce and family law problems. Let's get back to the discussion. Are you a veteran going through a divorce? Or perhaps you've been a military spouse navigating family law issues. Well, when veterans divorce, it's often a very different experience than the typical divorce pattern. Military service, deployments, PTSD, trauma, and the challenges of reintegration can place extraordinary strain on marriages and families. So today we're diving into the emotional and psychological landscape of veteran divorces. What makes them different? What challenges they present? And what veterans and their spouses need to know to move forward with strength and with understanding. Joining me is a truly exceptional guest who served both on the battlefield and in the courtroom. Honorable Mark Johnson, a retired Superior Court judge and a decorated veteran of the Iraq War. Judge Johnson served as a colonel in the United States Army and was awarded the Bronze Star for his leadership and service in Baghdad. For 11 years, Judge Johnson presided over Riverside County, California's Veterans Treatment Court, where he worked to help those who have served in the military facing legal challenges, often challenges that were tied to PTSD, traumatic brain injury, depression, and other combat-related struggles. Beyond his legal career, Judge Johnson is an advocate for veterans, serving on nonprofit boards and working to support service members in their transition to civilian life. He's also an author, and his debut novel, Scars and Strife, explores the raw and real struggles veterans face when returning home. So you've seen veterans with some significant PTSD issues. We've talked a lot about that. And the substance abuse. Not all of them have substance abuse, but you've seen them recover and regain the trust of the other parent and their children. And they're able to go back and co-parent or parent, just even the ability to parent. Can you share some stories of those that you've seen that have regained that ability to be parents?
I've seen miracles. I've seen vets. Thought, Lord, this guy needs a lot of help. He's never going to get clean. I've said that, and I'm sorry to say, some people I would almost like triage, and I'd be wrong. The more I keep thinking about it, then I think of another vet. But I can think of several veterans who, often senior guys, who their wives didn't trust them anymore. They had kids, say 5 to 15, and they were dangerous, and let me just say this. One of the things I will say, I'm always a little leery about talking about violence and PTSD. The vast majority of vets with post-traumatic stress disorder are not violent. There is a higher level of violence, but you're still talking than the average population for someone with severe PTSD, but you're talking about less than 10%. Be prone to any acts of violence. It's something like about 7% or something, and very low. I'm aware of those old movies. Like, I'm probably dating myself here, but there was a movie with Jane Fonda, John Voight, and Bruce Dern called Coming Home. And John Voight's the good-looking vet who's peaceful and against the war, and Bruce Dern is the Marine Corps captain who's got PTSD. They make you hate him. And the reason I'm saying this is a lot of times vets feel like people want to say thank you for your service, and then they don't want you around. I wouldn't hire you, but I wouldn't, but I'll give you 10% off your breakfast. Like I said, I'm a little leery because I've seen miracles. I've known hundreds of vets who they were doing really bad. They got out, usually male, had a couple combat tours. They got out, they lost the service, they lost their sense of purpose. They start using drugs or alcohol, and then they commit crimes. They beat up somebody, they get in a fight. And I've seen many veterans, they're now, those same people are reunited with family. Don't expect any spouse to hang out with some of these guys, to hang in there. But a lot of them do. And they say, I got my husband back. But I've seen divorces, but where these couples have now become they're friends and they
Yeah.
co-parent. There's a lot of people that can help, and they
Yeah.
can get better. They can
Right.
get better. They can have good relationships with their kids. They can have everything that they've wanted. It's very possible, but they got to get down there to the treatment. And
Right.
I would tell any vet who's having issues, anybody who is got a spouse or some significant other or anybody they know, maybe a neighbor, get a hold of the VA, contact me. There's so many people lined up to help these veterans right now.
Right.
If you're a vet who's suffering, now is probably the best time in history.
Well, here's what's interesting because if someone with military service has then gotten themselves into
Mm.
trouble with the law related to these issues or because of it or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Close enough, as you say.
yeah,
um, they may not have had domestic violence in the home, but if the act was bad enough, the criminal act, then it just throws the whole family thing
yeah,
into jeopardy. So now I imagine they find their entire lives are in chaos. And so I think, the ability to go to somebody like you, go to Greg Coker, others that are the support people that are out there, and they
yeah,
are out there, is
yeah.
there's this immediate issue here of I did this thing over here. If you fix this to get to the root issue, then everything it hit on the collateral damage has a chance of getting better too. Would you agree with that?
Yes. If I had one problem on the bench, it's my mouth sometimes got ahead of my brain. But I remember, I'd be talking to some veteran and we'd be hearing stuff. And I said, once or twice, look, I said, you got to slow down. I said, I'm getting a headache hearing about all your problems. We got to start taking them one by
Yeah.
one and combating them and get you past these
Yeah.
things. But you know, they're going through a divorce. They got a criminal problem. They got a restraining order. They don't have a car anymore. They don't have anywhere
Ugh.
to live. We're ordering them to do stuff, and they don't have a car to get to these meetings. So then we got to work on that. And sometimes, the problem, some of these people, you get the choice, go to court or get high. And I tell you, sometimes they got so many problems that getting high starts looking like a pretty good
Yeah,
option.
right, because it's just completely overwhelming.
Yeah,
So, okay, so what I want to do right now is I want to hand you, we've talked
I've
about
got
this.
one.
So here's what we're looking at. This is this little checklist, and what I want to tell the listening audience is, we're going to do a link to this checklist in the show notes, and in all of the social media posts. But this is called the do's and don'ts of joint custody, and it's a must-have checklist to protect your parental relationships during divorce. So really what this is as family attorneys, we obviously see when people do it wrong. And if you're in the middle of a custody dispute or you're about to be, this is like the main things that help the situation, what the court looks for, what we argue about. It helps your children win, really, in the long run. So, what I want you to do, Mark, is we're going to look at this custody checklist,
Mhm.
and there's 4 main areas. And my question is, this is something that, somebody
Mhm.
who's not dealing with heightened issues, like somebody who's been through military service, it probably has. This is for kind of the average bear. Let's
Okay.
call it the average bear. So if we were to say to a veteran, um, who's having some level of trauma, some level of PTSD. I
Yeah.
mean, we're not talking like the most extreme cases necessarily, but just some level. All right. And it's contributed to the decline of the marriage on one
Mhm.
way or the other. Let's look through the checklist. Which items here do we think someone who is right now experiencing those issues, no treatment, will have a hard time with?
You're asking PTSD, but I could tell you just about all these guys are using something to deal with it. So
Right.
I noticed
Okay.
don't drink alcohol or do drugs around your children.
Mhm.
Uh, sometimes some of these guys, okay, the kids are in bed.
Yeah.
What's the harm? If you got an issue with alcohol or drugs, if you want to find a reason, you'll always find it. But uh, I do like a lot of this because I tell you, when I was in the military, they got a checklist for anything. I went down to inspect a helicopter, and I don't know a
Yeah.
damn thing about helicopters, but I had my checklist. Okay, where's your blank? And
Right.
so the checklist is great. I do think it depends on the level of PTSD. And I mean, because like I said, I was, I was dealing with nightmares and that. I think I could do all these things. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call the VA gave me 30%, but some guys are 100%. I think
Yeah.
until they get a lot of their symptoms in order, they're probably going to have a hard time complying with any of these things.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
let's look at them because the audience can't see it right now. So
Yeah.
the first one is under the plan ahead section. And we say, don't move out without a clear plan for custody or time sharing, which implicates or indicates that you're
Talking.
talking.
Yeah.
Right. And so that might be a problem based on what we've talked about today, especially if we have emotional disconnect and all
I
of
guess
that.
you're a mediator, so you bring people to do a
Yep.
great job bringing people together. I will tell you, maybe I have a bad view of divorce, but it's like, do people ever communicate well? Maybe they need you there in the middle.
That is such a good point. Let me tell you, the people who communicate well are usually not going through divorce for extremely acrimonious reasons,
Yeah.
like unfaithfulness, severe drug issues. I'm
Yeah.
not saying you did, but
Yeah.
and other people are they're just gonna fight to fight. But there are people who kind of say, okay, we've been living
Yeah.
as roommates for a long time, so let's just agree to
Yeah, no, I
right.
can see. I
So
get that.
you just see some of that, and then a lot of times people will learn this stuff after they get beat up a little bit down to the family court. So yeah, no, you're not the only one. It is more
Yes.
positive in mediation. Okay, so someone who might be having some military service related issues, the talking piece might be hard. What about establish a workable timeshare schedule with the other parent before you move out? Same thing.
Yeah. I think the same thing. I think the focus with PTSD and things like that is the same with people who've got alcoholism or they're drug addicts. You got to focus on that first. So a lot of these programs, they'll teach you to focus on that even before your family, because you're not worth a crap to anybody if you're using and you're an addict. And I guess it depends on the level, but if you've got severe PTSD, these guys walk around, they literally see things that aren't there. And with apologies to my fellow veterans, I think you need to get that worked out before you start talking about taking on the responsibility of, say, 50% of the time with your children.
So when you look at this checklist, you're going to see what, kind of what
Yeah.
everybody in the normal world expects
Yeah.
people to do. And even if you're not someone who was in the military with issues, believe me, there are people out there with issues that can't do half of this stuff because they just can't exercise some common sense and get control of their emotions. But here's one way we handle this. So to your point about get treatment first. Some parents who are having these issues may come back and say, well, if I don't get 50-50 or I don't get at least 40% of the time, then the other spouse is going to get this huge amount of child support and I don't want them to get one penny more, blah, 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 blah. But to your point, you're saying, listen, get treatment first. And if you and I were in the same room, Mark, I would come alongside you and say, as the divorce lawyer and mediator, Judge Johnson is right. You get treatment first, even if it means you're going to pay a little bit more support for in the short term, right? Because you can't be a decent parent. And so in the long run, it's going to hurt your kids. And here's how we address that. Court on the first hearing, or if we're in mediation, we stipulate to the other parent having a larger timeshare because the parent with the problem is going to go get help. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, you got to swallow your pride. Second of all, you have to admit you need some help. Right. And third of all, you have to say, this is the path forward for my children to have a really great dad or a really great mom, because I can't be that right now. So we enter into an agreement or ask for the court for an order for a timeshare that's maybe 70% to, let's call it mom, 30% to dad,
Yeah.
because Your Honor, and let me pitch it. Let me pitch it to you. You're my family law judge, okay?
Okay.
Your Honor, we're here on a support
Okay.
and custody timeshare visitation motion. My client has seen some significant service in the military. He's been diagnosed with PTSD. He's got 45% diagnosis. And some of the things mom is complaining about in her motion, we know is pretty much directly related to the issues. And so he's committed and is enrolled in treatment right now. And what we know is that he cannot exercise more than 20%
Mhm.
timeshare, or maybe it needs to be supervised. I don't know what's happened in the past, right? But we'd ask that you would enter an order today, and
Mhm.
we're in agreement with the 20%,
Yeah.
with me putting it on the record, Your Honor, that he has entered treatment. And what I'd ask you to do is make that a very temporary order pending the outcome of treatment. And could we please have a return date in 3 months or 4 months so that we can come back and I get a report from his medical providers to give you a little report on how he's doing in treatment, and we revisit the issue of increasing his
Yeah.
timeshare. What do you say, Your Honor?
Okay. I'd say first off, you're brilliant, Ms. Bennett. And then
I'll take
secondly,
that all day long.
I'd say, granted, you've got experience and you've got the kind of personality to deal with this. Trust me. My most family law experience came from my own divorce. I see very few lawyers who do what you just did. You see, it's just this bickering and fighting and these quick little things and picking up files 2 minutes before. I mean, that kind of something like that is so reasonable. I can't imagine a judge saying no to it. And you're weaving in there all the sympathetic things about the person's background. These guys, I say guys and women with post-traumatic stress disorder, they're in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And if you can convey that to a judge so they understand it, but as long as they're working on it, they want to get better.
Right.
I think granted.
Hey, before we get back to the show, would you like me to serve as your personal mediator? Where I help you and your spouse or your soon-to-be ex navigate some pretty important family law issues, deciding things about your kids, how to split up your assets, your debts, all outside the chaos of the court. How do we do that? We do it faster, way more economically, and with absolute civility and confidentiality. If you want to know more, go ahead and hit that link below, and you'll find out how you can connect with me, and we can talk about what's most important to you and your future. Now, back to the show.
Thank you. Woo. But
Yeah.
and really that's a good family law attorney, when there's a tough situation like this, is
Yeah.
going to come in, and I always teach as I'm mentoring my attorneys in my firm, I teach them, you go into the family court with a solution to the problem you've presented to the court.
Mhm.
Because just like you, Mark, in handling these crazy calendars with more than
Yeah.
100 cases on them, there's not enough judges. And I tell clients that when they come in for the first
Yeah.
time, I'm like, do you know how many judges we're short in this county? Over 75. And that means all our judges are just, it's more cases than are humanly possible
Yeah.
to really give it due. So I teach my attorneys, go in with a proposed solution, because you got an overloaded judge who honestly, they're trying to do their best, but they don't have time to really delve into all of the nuances of the case.
Yeah.
They're going to look at your file for maybe 6 minutes, and you're going to get about 6 to 8 minutes of airtime on any given outside
I
of trial.
agree.
If you can come in with the solution,
Yeah.
right? Those are the attorneys who really do the best for the clients, in my humble opinion, on that deal.
Yeah. I don't. People don't understand how busy judges are. Like I got in criminal cases, I'd get a motion and be a Romero motion that was to strike a strike, so it would lessen the punishment. And, but I'm like, here's the motion, skip all the boilerplate, which you're always giving me, and then go right. Okay, what's the facts? And yeah, I don't have the time to read all the background law
Right.
related that brought us to this point, Judge. Just give me the bottom line.
Right.
What's the law and why should I grant it? But sometimes I'd say to lawyers, counsel, you've been going on for 5 minutes and I still don't understand how you want me to rule. Tell me how you want me to rule.
Yep.
And then, okay,
Yeah.
now I got something. But you just did it perfectly. Yeah. Give them a solution.
Yeah.
Makes you feel good. As a judge, I want to feel good about what I'm doing up there when I was on the bench.
When you have a crush of cases, and sometimes you just can't get through them all. And I'll tell you, for me, the most enlightening part of my career is when I go down and serve as a judge pro tem, temporary judges. That's
Yeah.
what we do to help the court out when judges are out on vacation or whatever. So they'll bring in experienced attorneys to do that. So me sitting on the family law bench, and I've done trials for the court, all of that stuff. is so enlightening because what do I see? I see the crush. I mean, I kind of know up here
Yeah.
what it is, but I don't know in here until I sit on the bench
Yeah.
and go, how are we supposed to get through all of this?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you miss it because you're in a hurry, because you just can't consume it all. And
Yeah.
so the reality is,
Sure.
I think it's a relief to a bench officer to have someone come in, and it may not be the right solution, but at least it's a path. It's a place to start.
Yeah.
Make
Well,
sense?
yeah, no, I mean, you're one of the
Yeah.
family idea. I see somebody like Kelly come. So thank God. Thank you for answering my prayers. Kelly's here. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it, some people aren't very good lawyers. You're like a crack lawyer, but I know she's gonna like make my life. You make the judge's life easier. That should be the key because you're more likely to rule if I understand a clear reason and what the ruling is.
Right, and that there's law behind
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but that's great.
And then especially in family court.
But
because
I think relating it to these vets, these, as I view it, these folks, people are heroes. And if you convey that to the judge, most judges, I mean, are going to want to, I would assume, give credit for that or
Yeah.
understand that in their ruling.
Well, what I will say about this is we're going to make this custody checklist available.
Yeah.
And you can click on the link to it. And it's good information to know because this is what sets you up to, be in good stead. And
It's not bad parenting advice for everybody, whether divorced or not.
yeah, that's an interesting point too, but it's true. Yeah. Pick up your kids and drop them off on
That's
time.
the adult.
Respect the other parent's time and help
Yeah.
with the homework and don't send them off with dirty clothes. Well, I want to look now as we kind of bring this conversation to a close at your book. So let me hold this up at the
All
camera. All right. So Mark, here's your book. This is Scars and Strife. It is a fiction novel. But it's so good. It's hard to put this book down. I have to tell you. What I want to do is for the first 5 people who contact me at my office, you can email me through the show, whatever, right? We'll put the link there. First 5 people who contact me and say, give me Mark's book, give me the judge's book, I will mail them and I will come over to you and bother you and get 5 signed copies. And I will give it to them as a gift. So let's start with, why did you write this book, Scars and Strife?
That's interesting because I answered that question, and sometimes I'm not always that consistent in my answers, but I think there's probably a thread that, I spent 28 years in uniform. I was active in reserve, and I was, I did a tour in Iraq. I was a battalion commander, a company commander. I had a lot of people under me, and retired as a colonel in 2013. And I had been on the Veterans Court for a year when I retired, and spent a lot of years helping vets. I've seen a lot of the pain they're in. And I guess I wanted to do something to honor these veterans. Trust me, I ain't making any money on this thing. But, I started in 2016 to 2018. I went to school. I got a master's in fine arts and creative writing. I wanted to tell a lot of the stories of these vets. Grant, I probably created a little bit of a Superman. I create an Army Ranger who's got 13 combat tours. The problem is these guys, they're very tough. And you see a lot of people getting killed going off to war. And then, then you kind of see these countries handed back to these a-holes that you were fighting. How do you think these Afghanistan veterans feel? Their buddies get killed over there. They're over there for years, and then you move out and you hand the place back, and we do it again. And this is not exactly the first time we've done that.
Right.
I meet with a group of Vietnam vets probably twice a month. They're still angry, feeling that they were betrayed by their government. And then I see the pain these vets are in. All these, they're in a lot of pain. So I wrote this to honor them. I like to write. I wanted to put down a lot of my feelings, how I felt.
And so you wrapped a lot of that into this main character, Randy Andrews.
He comes back. He's a hero, but wife doesn't like him anymore. He's alienated from his kids.
Yeah.
She's divorcing him. He doesn't have a job. And suddenly here's a guy that we were sending off to war, and he's got nothing. And so his solution is to flee to Mexico, where in a seedy tourist bar he meets Matilda, a cougar who's kept there as a uh, tourist draw. He bonds with the big cat and starts the road to healing.
It's great. It's a fascinating story, but
But
it bakes in all of these elements that you've seen, that you've personally experienced
yeah,
as well. Um, and I
well,
think to your point, we're not trying to unnecessarily criticize the government, but the reality is people who have been in military service have paid a price. There is a price
yeah,
to these wars, and the price is way beyond what's on the news. It's way beyond the economics of a war. Like you say, they've seen their buddies killed. They've
yeah,
had to kill. They've had the traumas, like the fellow who had
mm,
shot the kids
yeah,
unknowingly.
yeah.
So that feeling of all of the price that was paid to gain the ground in that country and stability. And when that just it seemingly goes away overnight, I can't imagine the messaging.
No, it's just you feel like it's such a waste, and I will criticize
Mhm.
the government. You don't have to, but I mean, for crying out loud, we keep on getting into these things, and it's easy to say let's go to war as long as somebody
Mhm.
else is doing the fighting, and a lot of these guys are in a lot of pain, and I love them. I mean, let me tell you, I've got 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-olds on the gun above my head, on the saw, or the machine gun. Um, who they're risking their lives to protect you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wonder what a 19-year-old can do, and if you hang out here in the States, you really wonder. These kids are amazing. I
Yeah.
trust my
Yeah.
life to them, and they risk their life to protect me. And it's like, how do you ever get over that? I used to tell people this in court. I had a bias in favor of vets, and I will plead guilty till the end of time. I just uh, and I wanted to write
Mhm.
something that kind of told the story and made somebody people could see just how much pain these people in, because they come back to the States too, and you got a society that has virtually very little of the
Yeah.
society understands what these vets have been going through.
Yeah. And they can't possibly understand because they're not educated. Most of us don't have any military in our families anymore. It's not
Yeah,
as common. But what's so beautiful about this book,
yeah,
and jarring at the same time in this book, is that it's written very raw. It's very real. But what it does is it helps you understand, as an outsider looking in, oh my gosh, is this really what they go through? And I think you're here to say,
yeah,
yeah, it really is what they go through. So, well, coming to the end of our discussion, it's really been, I think, a great discussion today.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so, for any military folks out there
yeah.
listening, or their families, what would the biggest message you'd want to convey to them in the context of all that we've talked about?
Look, reach out. There
Mhm.
are so many people that want to help you. You got to reach out. I'll talk to my veterans. I love you guys and gals, and I tell you, if you're sitting in your garage drinking every night, if you're
Mhm.
sitting there getting high all the time, if you're using methamphetamine and you got demons, just get the help. There's people like me. We're just waiting to help you folks. And you will find forgiveness, freedom,
Mm,
acceptance. I know a lot of vets. I know a lot of you probably think you did things that you can't be forgiven for.
mm.
No, you can. A lot of us have been over in those places. We've seen what it's like, and you're human. But you gotta let us know. Uh, let us help you. That's what we want. You're like the perfect lawyer. It's like you
No.
help people. Well, okay, maybe, but no. But I mean, I just mean you're compassionate.
Mm,
You help people, and you're like
yeah.
kick ass in court and as a lawyer, and I appreciate what you do for our veterans too, because
Oh,
they need help, and your sensitivity to it, because a lot of people
yeah.
just don't. I don't think they kind of don't care, and
Yeah.
everything. So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Beautiful sentiments. Your heart for veterans and people, really in general, shows.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark Johnson, for loving on them. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for your bold leadership in this area, because I know it's not easy. So,
Yeah.
the courage that it takes. And I think you've made a big difference today. So when I tell you thank you for your service, I mean, inside and out. And I mean, for the price you've paid,
Yeah.
and you paid it for a lot of us. So thank you, Mark Johnson.
God bless.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Mhm.